They said no housekeeper lasted more than 2 weeks in the Prescott mansion. Not because the work was too much, but because of her. Eleanor Prescott, flawless in appearance, ruthless in spirit. She could shatter a person with a single sentence, and her icy blue eyes could make even grown men shrink. By the time the 10th maid quit, the neighbors joked that the Prescott mansion in Seattle, Washington should have a revolving door just for staff. But then came Grace Miller, quiet, determined, carrying nothing but a worn duffel bag, an old pair of sneakers, and a secret she could never tell. Grace wasn't there to win Eleanor's approval. She wasn't there for prestige or comfort. She was there for one reason only, to save her little boy's life. What she didn't know was that stepping into that mansion wouldn't just test her patience, it would uncover buried truths, dangerous lies, and force both her and Eleanor to face the one thing they'd been running from, themselves. And it all started on a rainy Tuesday in Seattle. Grace had seen big houses before, but nothing like this. The Prescott estate sat high on a Puget Sound cliffside, with sleek glass walls reflecting the gray waves and tall pines swaying in the wind. The driveways stretched like a private road, winding past a Japanese garden and stopping in front of an entrance so polished she could see her own reflection in the double doors. Inside, everything gleamed: marble floors, chandeliers shaped like falling raindrops, and art pieces that probably cost more than her entire life's earnings. But there was no warmth here. The staff moved quietly, almost fearfully. Nobody smiled. Even Hank, the silver-haired chef, kept his voice low as he showed her the kitchen. "Rule number 1, he whispered, don't make eye contact if she's in a bad mood." "She?" Grace asked. He gave her a look. "Mrs. Prescott. You'll know when she walks in." Grace's first morning started before dawn. She scrubbed the marble foyer until her arms ached. Around 7 a.m., she heard the sharp click of heels on the staircase. She looked up. Eleanor Prescott was gliding down in a silk robe the color of wine, holding a mug of coffee like it was the crown jewels. Her hair was twisted into a perfect chignon, and not a strand dared to escape. Then, without breaking stride, a crystal vase toppled from the landing above. Grace lunged forward, catching it just before it hit the floor. Eleanor stopped at the last step, tilting her head. "You touched it," she said. "It was falling." "I don't care. Now it's contaminated. Throw it away." Grace hesitated. "It's perfectly fine." Eleanor's eyes turned to ice. "Did I ask for your opinion?" Grace swallowed her words, took the vase to the trash, and kept cleaning. Her hands were steady, but her jaw was locked tight. The next week was a series of petty, calculated tests. Eleanor would accidentally spill red wine on the white rug in the sitting room. She'd knock over a vase, then blame Grace for not placing it right. Once, she poured hot coffee on a bed Grace had just finished making. The others warned her. The housekeeper muttered, "Nobody lasts here." But Grace didn't flinch. She'd been through worse. Nights sleeping in her car, hospital administrators refusing to treat her son, an ex-husband who thought silence was the cruelest weapon. Compared to all that, Eleanor Prescott was just noise. Still, there was one thing Grace couldn't ignore: the upstairs office. It was always locked, and some nights, faint piano music drifted from behind it, followed by muffled sobbing. One stormy night, Grace was polishing the upstairs hallway when she saw Eleanor sitting on the floor outside that office door. Barefoot, mascara smudged, hands trembling as she clutched a glass of wine. For the first time, she looked less like a queen and more like a prisoner in her own castle. Grace's instinct was to walk away. It wasn't her business. But something stopped her. She set a clean towel beside Eleanor without a word and turned to leave. "Why haven't you quit?" Eleanor's voice was softer than Grace had ever heard it. Grace paused. "Because I can't. My son needs surgery, and his hospital doesn't take excuses as payment." Eleanor's eyes lingered on her for a moment before she stood abruptly. "Get some rest," she said, and disappeared into her room. 2 days later, Richard Prescott returned from a business trip to San Francisco. Grace was vacuuming near the library when she heard voices behind the half-closed office door. "You can't keep punishing the staff because of her," Richard's voice said. She ruined everything. Eleanor snapped. And now she's everywhere I look. Grace froze. Her? That night, whispers in the kitchen pieced it together. Richard's first wife, who had died in a boating accident, was Grace's distant cousin. Grace hadn't seen her in years, but the truth hit her like a wave. Eleanor's hostility wasn't random. It was personal. Grace made a choice most wouldn't. Instead of confronting Eleanor, she met cruelty with kindness. Fresh flowers in her room.
Tea brewed just right.
Sheets pressed sharper than before. Slowly, Eleanor's frost began to thaw. She started asking about Grace's son, Liam. One morning, an envelope appeared on Grace's breakfast tray, $200 in cash. For transportation, the note read. Then came the biggest surprise. I want you to come with me to a charity luncheon, Eleanor announced one afternoon. There's someone I want you to meet. The luncheon in Bellevue was unlike anything Grace had ever experienced. Crystal chandeliers, waiters in tuxedos, and women in designer dresses discussing art auctions. This is Dr. Melissa Carter, Eleanor said, introducing her to a poised woman in her 50s. She runs a Children's Heart Foundation. Within a week, Dr. Carter called. We've reviewed Liam's case. The foundation will cover his surgery, travel, and medication. Fully. Grace's knees gave out. She gripped the counter, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, oh my God, thank you. The day Liam came home from the hospital, the Prescott staff threw a small party in the garden, balloons, cake, even Hank's famous apple pie. Eleanor handed Liam a wrapped box. It's a book, she said softly. Your mom says you like to read. Call me Aunt Ellie. Later that night, Eleanor finally spoke the truth. I didn't hate you, Grace. I feared you. Your cousin was unforgettable. I thought I'd never live up to her. So I built walls. I became someone I didn't even like. Grace met her gaze. Pain changes people, but so can kindness. From that day forward, Grace wasn't just head of household operations. She was family.